of the past. The trials will not achieve it. Hiding of documents will not achieve it either. Some of it can be done through the legacy of the tribunal, but additionally we need another institution that will have a regional character. That is the only instrument that will guarantee, to a degree at least, that we will not again take up arms and start fighting each other. This is the only instrument that can reduce the tensions, the only instrument that can bring people together, that can influence us to remove or change slowly the negative tone that we hear still today and bring reconciliation and peace between victims and others. We will hear many ideas today. All this can teach us to think about what is it that's complementary to the tribunal, and then to head in that direction to reduce the hostilities and to be less focused about victims and victimization, to finally draw a line and find an exit from the past.
So you're saying, and then I'm going to ask a question to the entire panel and just ask you to kind of raise your hand. Can we agree then that it is or was unrealistic for the Security Council, since the Security Council established it, but it's unrealistic for it to be believed that an international criminal court, certainly one so far removed from the region, can by itself help to maintain and help to bring about and maintain international peace and security, that it may not be able to do that. But when you speak of the things that it leaves behind, that is, its legacy, that some of those things that it leaves behind can then be taken up by people and organizations in the region, in different states, Bogdan, in the region, to go further. But that ICTY did make a contribution. Can we all agree to that? Yeah. Yes, I don't hear any no. Okay. Ms. Tershilic, you have been advocating reparations. And again, this is something that the tribunal was not in its statute. President Robinson spoke this morning a little bit about his interest in pursuing that issue. Tell me how you hope that this gap, so to speak, in what the tribunal has done can be filled.
As there were lots of expectations at the beginning of the work of the tribunal, hopes that it will contribute to the justice and the law and all the expectations of victims, which was something that was unrealistic. However, the tribunal has contributed by creating an atmosphere where we can even think about asking for reparations for all the victims. In one segment would be the continuation of trials, and the other sense would be looking for compensation, material and moral. Then we have a list of principles that was presented by the United Nations in 2005, where we have listed all the possible ways of compensation that are due to the victims and the families of the victims. And that is somewhere where the contribution of the tribunal is important. That was the contribution for the judicial systems in all former Yugoslav countries, namely to help them intensify their efforts in processing such crimes, but also by creating a foundation which gives opportunity for the associations of victims and other similar associations to ask for such compensations, both material compensation, financial maybe compensation, but also through something that we are hoping to see soon in our archives in various states. Because one question that I'm wondering about is whether in 10 years' time, when all the documents and digital versions will be part of the archives of the state archives or human rights organizations in historical museums, maybe all this will be included into their materials. Maybe we will have testimony of some crucial witnesses. And I'm wondering whether places of suffering, such as prisons and camps, mass graves, will they be marked? Will there be memorial plaques and so on will be placed there so that people wouldn't be able to say, no, I don't know where the camp was, because there will be a mark, there will be a place where you can light a candle, where you can put a wreath. Will we have then, we would by then know where all the grave sites are? There are so many missing persons about whose fate we don't know anything about yet. The tribunal has given a major impulse towards finding that, and we have raised our expectations, but that's not necessarily bad. We can discuss how much of one huge job, even a huge debt that we all have, that we all owe to the victims, because all the violence leaves a mark and the war crimes leave the deepest mark. Therefore, it is important to work on this reparation approach, on joint memory and awareness in our society, because in our society people only see victims from our own group without feeling solidarity for other groups. But the thing is, we all need solidarity. All victims need recognition, never mind whether they were victims of genocide and others victims of some other war crimes. It is important to document the facts, to recognize and say, yes, that was suffering, and give the people support of both material and other reparations. These all are problems that the justice system and other institutions are facing, and the tribunal has contributed in that sense.
Mr. Chartier, I don't think we began at 2:45. People were coming in. Linda, you heard Vesna speak about missing persons. You're with the Commission of Missing Persons in Kosovo. And then, Professor Savage, we're going to go to you. Please, Linda.
Yes, I would definitely be interested to complement what Mrs. Vesna just mentioned, because with regard specifically to the issue of missing persons, I think when ICTY is thinking about its legacy, there is a lot that it can contribute to in terms of peace building and in terms especially of the needs of the families, the needs still ongoing today of the victims themselves. If we look at the caseload still today reported at least to the International Committee of the Red Cross of cases reported missing during the armed conflicts in ex-Yugoslavia, we talk about more than 15,000 persons still missing today. And this definitely does not allow communities and ethnic groups to live in peace and to live in a reconciliated manner among each other. So for sure, if addressing the issue of missing persons means, of course, to bring to justice persons who have been responsible for the disappearances, it also means to try to address the needs of the families in terms of the right to know. The families have the right to know where the whereabouts and the fate of their loved ones. And to that, for sure, the archives, especially of the ICTY, can contribute a lot in this objective. It has been doing so already now, and it is the case, for instance, in the working group on missing persons related to the conflict in Kosovo, where ICTY has already availed quite a number of material that has led basically to answers for the families, and therefore to address this basic need of the families to know the fate and whereabouts of their loved ones.
Professor Savage, is there a role for the academic?
Naučnik, istraživač.
A scientist, a researcher who has been working on research of Holocaust, genocide, and other forms of crimes against international law for 2 decades now. Before we try and elaborate the issue of scientific approach and the importance of the ICTY legacy for the scientific research, so before approaching that issue, I would like to make 2 statements. My first statement is the following. The scientists, researchers are grateful to the United Nations for establishing and helping the activities of the ICTY, regardless of the problems, of the existing problems and difficulties that we've heard about this morning and recently, because of the establishment of this tribunal gave birth, or rather gave flesh to the thought of a Jewish thinker, Raphael Lemkin, who is a person who has contributed to instituting this concept, which finally entered the documents of such international institutions. Also, the scholars are thankful to the United Nations and the ICTY in relation to the activities that have to do with the creation of the strategy we've been discussing today. There are numerous problems. For instance, is it maybe too early to discuss the issue of legacy, which was something that was mentioned by the prosecutor, Mr. Bramertz. From the point of view of science and availability of the documents in possession by the ICTY and the discovering of truth, I would like to say the following. The legacy of the ICTY, and especially relevant documentation that was created at the time when these crimes were being committed, and I'm saying crimes in plural, I would like to draw attention of the authors of this strategy. Here there is mention of war crimes. This panel discussion also used this term, but I would like you also to use other formulations. There are grave violations of international right and so on. It's important to note that all types of crimes are included here, but the legacy of the ICTY in its form, in its extent, in its quality, all of that is of historical importance. Please hear me. I stress of historical importance. And why is that? We must admit that without the ICTY materials that was gathered by the ICTY, including all the various researchers who are here, including the Republika Srpska Commission, government commission for determining what has happened in Srebrenica in the period between 19th and 20th of July 1995. Without all these materials, it will not be possible to prosecute crimes against humanity and international